Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time you are listening to this recording. Welcome to another episode of Pages to Progress. We have been diligently going through a particular book that we've been talking and sharing and discussing and really just allowing it to wash over us as we try to glean what we can from it. Dee, would you mind holding up the book for me, please? This is the book that we're going through. I'm going to encourage anyone, all of our listeners, if you want to follow along on the journey, you can do. Ben McBride, Trouble in the Water. That's the book. It's if you click the description, all the details are in there. You can follow along with us. You can get a digital copy, physical copy. That's entirely up to you. Um, tonight, well, it's tonight for us, but tonight we are going to do the very final chapter of this book. It's going to bring things to an end. We've got a lot to reflect on, and we'll see where we are. I'm joined by the faithful Dee, the faithful Jessica. Thanks for joining us, ladies. I think you two have been probably the most consistent in this 100%. You've been committed to the cause. All right. Do something now. Chapter 8. I think he kind of starts off this chapter kind of hitting home what it means to belong. I think he wants to try and discuss, well, he tells basically stories about him essentially trying to be involved in an actual protest, being incarcerated, and he walks through that whole process, and it's quite interesting. But he talks about the notion of simply what it means to belong. So here's what I think he's trying to say. I think he's trying to say that learning to belong or the concept of belonging is about seeing someone else for who they really are, what they believe, and what they stand for or do not stand for. It's the actual act of doing the work of recognizing this is someone else's world. And when you do that for yourself and realize similarities and differences as well, I think that's part of the process of belonging. What about you, ladies? How did you see the idea of belonging, or how would you define it after reading this chapter for you?
I want to listen to what he has to say.
Okay. I think for me, belonging is when you can sit next to someone in a group, whatever it may be, where you feel like you are being seen, that you are being heard,
Mm.
and you are um, you are accepted as exactly as who you are. I think that's what belonging is.
Okay.
And it feels safe.
Hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jessica, you've heard what Dee has to say.
I'll say did it to that. Um, one of the things that I have learned in my personal life and in my journey is not to shrink myself or change who I am in order to fit in. Because I mean, we're looking for a place or a space where my voice is heard, not just like, oh, yeah, 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 whatever. You know what
Mm.
I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like my opinions and my suggestions are taken in consideration, not just like, oh, yeah, 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 whatever. Also, to me, it's like not to have to prove that I deserve a seat on the table. You
Mm.
know what I mean? To prove them that I do belong here. I do belong to have a seat. Also, like this said about showing up as who you are without the fear of people judging you. It pretty much is summarized to feel to be a safe space where you're gonna be seen and heard, and also whatever we're building together, it's goes both ways. It's not just me making the effort to
Whatever we're building together with what?
what we're bridging together. We're
Mm,
building together this kind of like a space, safe space. And I want to feel like I'm not the only one make the effort to
mm.
make it. I'm making you feel safe. I'm trying to make you to understand you, but at the same time, I'm expecting the same from you. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it sounds like you're describing a space where we offer permission for other people to exist in confidence.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a quote on page 177 near the top. It says this, but hear me on this. If you're willing to hold one another's perspective, you belong. If your spirit is telling you to bridge, you belong. And then he goes on to say, in other words, if you're asking yourself if you belong, simply tell yourself yes. Um, so I thought about this within the perspective of imagine you're in the company of someone who believes certain things that you personally think is quite destructive, or you disagree so strongly because you are convinced that their belief is damaging. Would the concept of belonging
I can eat it.
would the concept of belonging essentially be something where I am trying to allow someone who has a completely opposite view, who, even though I think is destructive, feels safe enough to have their view?
Yes. I
Can
have
you say
been
that
in that.
again, Pastor Sam? So I'm sorry. I did not listen carefully. I am sorry.
Okay, I was trying to say is imagine you walk into a room and there's someone who completely disagrees with you, but not just disagrees with you, someone whose views you have a personal opinion are destructive or dangerous, not just annoying, but destructive or dangerous. Is belonging, or at least trying to create belonging, creating a space so that individual can feel safe and confident to share their destructive view?
Isn't that what we all said? Both of us said that in the first place.
Sure, if it's that obvious, I didn't.
I think that's what...
Sure, if that's what we're saying, I guess that here's the reason why I reiterated it. I guess the real reason why I say it, because I just wanted to say that's really hard.
I wanted to make a comment about what you were saying because I been there. I was there just a few months ago. I was there. I talked about this before with a friend that I put out my heart and said, like, this is how I feel. And it got nowhere.
Mm,
It is hard. It is hard to understand that even if you provide a safe space for this person
mm,
to be who they are and give them room for them to exchange how they feel, what they think, the way they think. It's in the one part of the book, I don't remember the chapter, he talks about sometimes it's not enough.
mm,
The other person won't allow you to do bridging. And that's hard. It happened to me. I have my mentality is to give a space, safe space for people that I'm not gonna judge you. I'm trying to understand where you're coming from or what your ideas. But like I said earlier, I'm expecting you to do the same for me. And there's people out there who they just want to think that they're right and
mm,
that their mentality is what it is, and nothing can change that. And they're not willing to give you the safe space either.
mm. So so here's the thing. After a while, there comes a point in time where you have to essentially act as a form of resistance. Now, McBride talks about how he stepped in and started to protest. There was a really powerful story where he talks about one particular protest where him and another guy, they start one of the I think it was a black pastor who laid down on the concrete, and the white pastor drew around that pastor with chalk, and then they put a candle in the middle, and then it rained, and they got the umbrellas to try and keep the light alive and stuff like that. I thought that was incredibly powerful. Now, that's a pretty radical, not very normal story. Are we? Let's look at the state of where we are right now. Right now, across America, things are pretty intense, and there's all kinds of injustice that are ensuing right from the top of our government that are affecting the lives of those who are the prevented and the persecuted, at least who fit into those categories. Is the call for us to do exactly likewise? Should we be out on the streets? Should we be protesting, marching? Should we be lying on the floor and drawing chalk around ourselves? I'm using these as illustrations to ask the real question. Is there a call to action that you think we should be essentially doing something radical like this? Tied to that question, is it biblical? Do you think the Bible calls us out to do this? What do you think, Dee?
I do. I do think, I believe, as followers of Christ, as saying we're Christians, I believe we have duty, we have responsibility to participate in those radical acts, if you will, to push back, to fight against those who commit injustice, or those who, you know, marginalize others, or whatever it may be, that I think, I think we do have that responsibility. And is it biblical? I believe it is. I mean, I think the whole Jesus' life demonstrates it. He fought for those who are others, right? And I think it's just a matter of, like, how do we go about doing that, right? How do we go about doing that? And I think that's why in the Black American movement, there's been, it's been all about peace protesting, right? Protesting through peace. And I don't believe that we should be getting ourselves involved in violence. But I think through peaceful protest.
You would consider his examples of him protesting as peaceful?
Oh, yes, that's a peaceful protest.
Okay.
When I say violence, I mean you're carrying weapons, and you're hurting, right? You're hurting someone, right? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do think that.
So let me ask a follow-up question to that, and this is not just to you, Dee, it's for all of us to consider. It's the New Testament. You're in the ancient times. You're walking into the synagogue. Jesus is sitting in the corner, and he's making a whip. And then he gets up with so much anger, he flips the tables, and he drives everyone out the temple. Is that peaceful protest?
When you asked the question first, Adi and myself, the first thing that it came to me when you were talking about protests. I'm like, oh, I remember Jesus kicking everybody out of the temple and turning tables over. And that was his way to protest. This is enough. And I don't think it was peaceful. Sometimes peaceful doesn't work. Peaceful is not enough.
to me, that was peaceful in that he didn't hurt anyone by doing that. He didn't, you know what I mean? At least far as I know from the Bible story, that no one got physically hurt through that process.
No, I don't think the Bible story says anyone got
Yeah.
physically hurt.
Yeah. And he was, yeah, basically, yeah. To me, violence is where through your action, someone actually gets hurt. There's bodily harm. So, and I think that, you know, there's that in the Bible, it talks about just anger, right? And Jesus had a reason. He had a reason for doing what he did. It wasn't out of just anger out of nowhere that didn't have any justification.
Understand. They were disrespecting God's house. I get it. That's his reason.
Well, it was beyond that. It was beyond disrespect for the house of God. I mean, these people were, you know, I mean, they're basically cheating and stealing from people. Yeah.
Well, it was almost a protest against the marginalization of the poor as well, because there was, the whole thing was there. Reason is an interesting idea, or motive is an interesting idea. You know, Ben McBride takes me back to this image. I can't remember where it was a few chapters ago. You remember when he came up to the police station and he poured blood on the doorstep? Now, I would kind of describe that as somewhat violent. I get it. No one was hurt. He wasn't trying to physically bring someone pain, but the act was kind of violent in its image. Or maybe what we're looking for is a protest that is striking enough for people to get up and actually pay attention. And that's what I think is very prevalent as we look at the Bible stories all throughout scripture. In moments where injustices have arisen, there have been moments where people have had to step up and be quite robust in the way that they stand in the face or stand in between injustice and the marginalized. And that's very much the call. I can see that's very prevalent to us. Now, in today's day and age, this arrests my attention because I wonder to myself, are my acts of protests strong enough to fight for the marginalized? Last week, I think it was, did you guys hear about the economic blackout?
No.
Yes.
So I can't remember what date it was, Jessica, if you know the date.
Last Friday.
It was last Friday, the economic
February
blackout.
28th.
Right. So the economic blackout on February 28 was a grassroots movement that has gone around the world through social media and beyond to boycott the buy-in of anything from these major corporations, and essentially have no transactional payments on your card, as a protest to essentially send a message to the powers that be that the people have the power and they can switch off the light of economic advancement in a moment. And for 24 hours, I think it was, Jessica, the call was, the call was for people to stop buying. I had mixed feelings about it, you know. Now I ended up not buying anything. I don't think it was a huge sacrifice for me. I just decided, okay, well, I just won't buy it today on Amazon. I'll buy it tomorrow on Amazon. And there was a part of me that just felt a bit guilty because of that. Now, later on, you know, some people published some results and stuff. I think Target lost something to the tune of 155 billion on that day. I guess that's pretty significant if you think about things. And Walmart lost a lot of money. There's a number of companies that lost a lot of money. I guess you could call it a 2020 version of flipping tables. In some respects. There is another economic blackout coming up soon. This time it's longer. I think it's 3 or 5 days or something like that. And
who are this? So it's like when you say big economic giants, it's like just like this big.
they're mainly targeting the companies that have rolled back DEI policies. That's essentially what they're doing. Sorry, Jessica, you wanted to say something?
No, that's what I was about to say. It's mainly like I did it. I stopped buying at certain stores because they rolled back on the DEI because
Yes.
people didn't realize that it affects everybody. It's just like a spectrum of people who was affected by it. And to me, it's personal too.
Yeah, it is. So one of the questions I thought about as I was reading through this chapter is, what are some of the reasons that stop us from standing up with the biblical directive to protest? One of the things that stops me is my impact is not going to make a big difference. That's what I was thinking when I didn't choose to buy on that particular Friday. I was like, I felt almost hypocritical because you know what? I bought something on Thursday evening at like 11:30 something on Amazon.
Before midnight.
Yeah.
Oh, before because you knew it was coming up.
And but after I bought it, I was just like, what are you doing, Sam? This doesn't even make sense. But afterwards, when I saw some of the published results and I saw the billions of dollars that these companies lost in 24 hours, I was just like, whoa. So one of the things that holds me back from actually making or standing up or making an effort to metaphorically pour blood on the police station's steps is the fact that I think I'm not going to make a difference. And sometimes I wonder if everyone else is also going to join the flipping table movement. Those are some of the things that I think about. Another thing that I feel is hypocrisy, because even though I boycotted on the Friday, I still have my Amazon Prime membership. And it's something that is I'm working through and figuring out. But if you look at the theme of protesting throughout this book and essentially what Jesus was doing and some of the prophets were doing, these robust approaches were cause their lives to completely be inconvenient and painful at times. The biggest question for me is, do I have the courage to step out and be inconvenienced and even lower my privilege because I'm trying to stand for those below me? Am I making sense?
Yes.
Any thoughts, ladies?
I have to agree that I think one of the biggest barrier is thinking to yourself, is it even going to make a difference? Me getting involved, is that even going to make a difference? And in some ways, like as I was thinking about this and I was thinking about, actually I was going to actually text you, Pastor Sam, and say, Pastor, with this stuff going on, and I'm like thinking to myself, Pastor Sam, what are we going to do? Should we go out and and I thought, well, I would love it if instead of me just going out there by myself, okay, if I had the support of Pastor Sam and the church, and that we do it as a church, you know what I mean, as a church body, to be able to go out and be involved in some of this protest or whatever you will, and and I thought, well, I shouldn't have to look to the church, I shouldn't have to rely on the church, and I would still go out by myself, but honestly, I would love support of.
Well, let's unpack that a little bit more, D, because on one hand, I agree with you. Yeah, you're right. You should have a very individual walk with Christ enough for you to be able to step and do something. But the other hand, there is a role and responsibility for the church. And like it's not just this social club that we get together and
Right.
every weekend and we just have these amazing potlucks and we go camping and
Right.
and then every now and again once a year we head off for a mission trip and come back. I think there is a specific role and responsibility of God intentionally placing this community of people in this area at this time to impact the community that faces injustice and pain and worry. And I have been honestly thinking about what can we do to try and impact this community. I don't know. Is it a march? Is it stepping outside of I don't know, Tesla with the rest of them and boycotting them? I don't know. But I think there's definitely, because if you look at the patterns of the Old Testament, they use the body in order to get stuff done to fight for the marginalized. Like in the New Testament, it was Peter who stopped everyone and said, "All right, we need to stop doing this. We're not paying attention to all the widows. We're not paying attention to all the poor. We're gonna set up a group of individuals that come together. Their role and responsibility is to look after the widows and the poor." And he sent them out. Like, I think it's important for us to recognize God has commissioned the church to be his representation of his image. And part of that, a huge part of that, is fighting for injustice.
I mean, when we walked, together as a church, joining other churches for George, during that time, the George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, I thought, and I heard you multiple times, Pastor, saying, that you weren't quite sure whether you were the right person to be speaking at that, at that gathering. And I'm thinking to myself, no, I thought that was really the great thing that we did. I'm so glad that we did that. I think that if we did not join, what a shame on us, that we didn't when it was such a crucial time, and I think that if as all these things are unfolding, in our lives right now at this time, if there are, peaceful protests or whatever it may be that as a church that we can go out and participate in, I think that we should.
Any thoughts, Jessica?
I am with D. And also what we were talking earlier about violence and peaceful protests and feeling that we're not doing, probably we're not gonna make a difference. I think on Saturday there's gonna be a protest in Mexico for the Women's March. If you don't know, it's big, really big.
What do you mean a protest in Mexico for just women?
Yes, because women get killed just for being women.
Right.
I don't know why it's special. I mean, it happens all over the world, but Mexico, oh my goodness.
It's bad.
It's bad. Yeah, numbers are crazy.
So they do a protest every International Women's Day, which is March 8th.
Yep.
And they were talking about, violence. And it's like, it's not about violence between groups, also like damaging buildings, federal buildings or business, like what happened on Black Lives Matter protests. And unfortunately, that's the kind of violence when I thought about it was physical violence, what I think was Dee talking about, but I was talking about when I saw Jesus was violence, it was about flipping the tables. You know what I mean? Like not going aggressive towards someone else. It's just to the building, to what it represents. And also like we are called to, as Christians, to stand up for the marginalized communities, for those that, pretty much to stand up for injustice also. And I have seen Christians said it does not affect me. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's not my problem. And what this said, I did the protest with the previous church I was attending on Black Lives Matter. I walked with the church to a Black Lives Matter protest. And it was peaceful. There was no any kind of violence or anything. But it's to make, to also, it's like Christians of difference. This is how I lived it. Christians of different denominations and different nationalities and ethnicities coming together to stand up for an injustice that is targeting a specific minority group. And that's what we're called to do. We're not called to do violence and destroy buildings and all that. Like, come together as a group and say, hey, we see you, we acknowledge this issue, and we think it is wrong, and we got your back.
And that's
how I see it.
It takes courage. It takes courage to make that step. There's a quote on 187. I'm following on what you said about the notion of us thinking to ourselves, it doesn't affect me. The bottom of 187. Now, in all these cases, keep in mind that although you didn't personally create the system that benefits you, you did inherit it, and you likely reap rewards from its existence. Ben McBride talks a little bit about the importance of imperfect action. And I wanted to ask you, ladies, knowing full well that it's a very up and down journey to resist, protest, to step up and flip tables, whatever it is that fits within that. What does the idea of imperfect action mean to you? And how do you think that fits within your framework of being a follower of Jesus?
So let me share something with you guys. I talked about it very briefly when, Paul gave his sermon at our church a few weeks ago, right? I was at that time talking about my workplace.
Right.
And my workplace currently is a very small place. And I chose to work there because the administrator of that building is somebody that I had worked with previously. But at that time, I was working as a nursing consultant who go from building to building, and not staying in one building and being part of one building. So he wasn't like my boss or anything. In fact, I was more overseeing him and the building and all that. So anyway, I went, found through recruiter that he was working in this building and they were looking for a director of nursing. And because I knew him already, I knew what I would be getting myself into as far as that working relationship goes. I went in, and during the interview process, one of the nurse manager asked me a question that kind of left me scratching my head a bit, because his question, I think, basically was, when you come in and when you start working as a director of nursing, will you be for the administrator, or will you be for us? And at that time, when he asked me that question and I wouldn't quite fully understand what he was saying, I, just based on my understanding of what I think he was asking, I said, I think we will be a team. And so when I went in, and having started working with this person much more, closely, because, I found him to be someone who was such a leader that squashed everyone else's voice but
I see.
his.
Mm-hmm.
So this entire time, I'm having to speak up, especially speak up because on behalf of my team,
Mm.
being their advocate.
Mm.
And, I mean, my goodness, this year and 3 months, I've been thinking every other day, oh God, I want to leave. I want to leave. I don't leave. I can't leave because I can't leave my team behind. And, I've had a few conversations with him. And good thing is that I'm not a person who hold grudges. He's also not a person who hold grudges. So even if we end up butting heads or not agreeing or whatever, right? It's we can put it aside and continue to work. But it doesn't make me happy being there. And so now I'm thinking, okay, I think it's time for another conversation. And I've been praying about it and mulling in my head. And today I got together with the team and I said, hey, I'm thinking about talking to him again. But I need you guys'
Support.
feedback on this because I asked him, am I, since coming in, because they've been working with him longer than I have, right? I said, am I making this situation worse? Am I bringing out the negatives in him? Is that something that I am doing, right? Because I'm not perfect, right? I am, obviously it's a two-way stuff going on, right? And what they told me was that, no, it's not you. What you're doing is speaking up, but he's always been that person. You're not making him to be that person, but he's been that person, right? And 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 I told them, I don't like myself. I don't like the way I've been behaving in that interaction with him. Yes, I'm standing up for the staff. I must. I cannot stand down and I just speak up. Yet at the same time, I told them I don't always like myself the way I interact with him, and I want to be able to change that. I don't want to, I've never worked like that with anyone before. And so that part of it is that imperfect methods or imperfect action, whatever it is. And I think that, the author talked about having to adjust, right? Given situations. And I think that that's where, I've been doing that, but I feel like I'm at a point where, for my mental health, that I need to have another conversation with him. I don't know if I've answered your question, but
No, you have.
Yeah.
You actually brought me to exactly what McBride was saying on page 191, where he talks about protesting or boycotting, making demands is not going to work. Sometimes we think that. But starting a dialogue, asking for a conversation, making your case logical, and love. The reason why he says that, he uses the example of his children do not have privilege in comparison to him and his wife. And so if they started protesting, it would do nothing. But if they started speaking, it might actually do something. It was quite funny to just even imagine kids. I was like, no,
Yeah,
we won't go to bed. We won't go to bed.
Kids have tried that.
Yeah, I'm sure they have. But then he goes on to say, the demand that may work in one setting will need to be adjusted in different settings to reach the goal, which I think is basically in essence what really encapsulated your story. And there are times to flip tables and there are times to write a strongly worded letter. And we have, because I think he says somewhere, he says, how you make your demand matters. And that's something that's really crucial in the work of trying to stand up for the marginalized. We have to be intelligent about doing. And sometimes that actually creates more stress and pressure because now you have to figure out all the different lefts and rights and up and downs that you have to, sometimes you have to get support. And sometimes I think speaking to too many people doesn't always help because everyone has their own opinion. One person says, go in with guns blazing, and someone else is just like, he used the example of um what was the name of that guy? He's a very famous philosopher and theologian. He's I can't believe No. Anyway, he went into the jail and the other guy was being handcuffed. And every time the officer processed him from one place to the next place, he kept on saying, "Thank you, my brother. Thank you, my sister. Thank you, my." And they asked him, "Why are you keeping on thanking him?" He had this remarkable response where he says, "Oh, come on. I hope I can find this because this was good."
I do remember this part. I do.
What was the quote about the light?
It's on page 184 at the bottom.
184.
Always leave the light on.
There we go. That's it. Always leave the light on because you never know when they'll come home. Such a profound statement in the respect that even though he was protesting against those who simply didn't quite understand that they were perpetuating broken systems that marginalize and suppress others, he was still leaving the door open that people can experience transformation and actually come to the realization that they're hurting and not healing. The work of imperfect Christianity can be deflating to your soul sometimes if you focus so much on what you alone can do for the huge problem. But the Christian is able to faithfully do their part because they know that they aren't the one with the power. It is God who has the power to speak to the entire problem at large. I don't think McBride covered that in his book, but I do think it's one thing we need to remember when we decide to do something. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Any other thoughts that stood out for you in this chapter?
You just like can I refresh my memory when you said about children and then protesting and then we're not gonna get anywhere. I have two teenagers, and even since they were like tweens getting into teenage age, I bump heads with them, and I still have after today. But one of the things it reminds me of him is like, you want me to understand where you're coming from? You need to sell me your case, explain it to me, make me understand. And it reminds me of that. Sometimes it's not just about protesting, and it's about also like having an open conversation, like trying to understand. And that's what it reminds me of, like an experience. And when he talks about the leaves the light on, it somehow it reminds me of, I had been advocating for one of my kids for the past 16 years. And it's hard to deal with hospitals, therapists, schools, with the whole system. It can be a nightmare. But I do remember going to a conference where this mom said this to the crowd, and I kept that in mind. It's gonna be hard. It's not gonna be an easy path when you're advocating for your children. But when you advocate for your children, don't get violent, don't get angry, don't yell at them. Stay calm. And try to, if that person doesn't want to work with you, look for someone else that wants to listen to you and hear you and help you. And I have done that. I have done that where I have to sit with 10 people in the school in a meeting. And sometimes I get upset, but I stay calm. And we try all together. We want the same thing. What is best for the kid? And I have to listen. And it's just like sometimes staying calm and be open to listen to the other side. It gets you somewhere. And that's what it was, the light, leave the light on. That's what it reminded me of. it will get them somewhere, or they will remember. Like I know in a couple of meetings, they have told me when we finish the meeting, you're one of the easiest parents to work with. We're happy to work with you. And it was because I've always stay calm. I always try to be respectful. I always try to understand what, as teachers, nurses, therapists, school principals, they were coming from. So it was just like, I always nice to them, even if we didn't agree on what we were going to do. But to be told you were one of the easiest partners to work with, because I would always say, oh, but in the future, if this doesn't work, then we change it. Like, I'm giving you the chance. It's just like he was being nice to all of these police officers in order for them to, he's been nice to us despite how we're being treating them. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
It makes an impact in people, how you behave, how you treat them. Makes them wonder.
Yeah. I don't get me wrong, I understand what you're saying. There's a part of me that's uncomfortable with it because I'm not saying every time you need to do this, but there is legitimacy in real anger.
Yes.
There's legitimacy in the moments where quiet and collected resistance is simply not enough for the saving of individuals.
Yes, and I'm gonna tell you, I do agree with that, what you just said, because there were 2 times in the 16 years that being nice, being all that proper, didn't get me nowhere until I got angry, and I told them that what I knew about my rights of my kid were, and if they were not gonna make what we were supposed to get, I was gonna sue the school district. So I did it once and almost a second time a few years ago.
Right.
Or like I have to go to the other proper way. I was nice, I was everything, but I was getting nowhere. So I do get that part too. There are times, yes, I do agree. There are times where being nice, being pacifist won't get you anywhere. And that's when my dark side comes out.
Sure. Or I'm going to challenge you and say it depends. Because we laugh when you say that's your dark side coming out, but I still want to maintain that still when the righteous side can still come out, even in that. So page 192, and he says this all throughout the entire book. He says, I challenge you, but right at the bottom of the page, step into your power. I challenge you again with that question that is bigger than what will you do? I ask you instead who you will become. So there is a proportional relationship between the resistance that you decide to act out and the work you have done in the becoming of who you are as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus. There is also a proportional relationship between the resistance you decide to act out and the self-care that you have given yourself in your life. And you can still be angry and not lose control. Yes. And that relationship can really only be solidified if you are rooted in a God whom you may not be able to fix the scenario, but he can. Or you may not be able to handle the emotional upheaval of what is taking place, but he will give you the strength to walk through it. And I think we've come to the end of the book. He really homes in on this point at the end. Essentially, it is about being more than doing. In fact, the being enables you to do better, whether it's flipping tables or writing a strongly worded email. And I really do feel like McBride is calling us to really think about every time we want to act, we have to try and retract and even take a deep breath and thinking, who do I want to be in this scenario? Or who am I? So that the best of me can come out. Not the dark side, the best of me that can come out. Because I just want to make sure that we're not justifying language for saying I let myself loose, I am not myself, or anything like that, because there is holiness in the act of resistance.
When I say my dark side, I didn't mean that I can be mean or disrespectful or anything. It's just like people perceive me as someone submissive and very bubbly.
I got you.
And they don't think that I will get to the point like, no. Like when my kids have told me when I'm serious, when I mean business, I'm scary because I'm this really bubbly, nice person most of the time. So it's unexpected. They see it like, oh, it means I mean business. Not to be violent or disrespectful to anybody.
I understand.
It's just like people perceive me as someone so bubbly, so like, oh, they can walk through me, and it's just like, no, I'm not like that. That's what I meant.
Right. No, thank you for clarifying. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think even in that, there is a marginalization in how we brand people, and we labor expectations on them because they fit into a category of woman or black or ethnic minority or whatever it is that we put out. And it's up to us to try and reframe some of those things to give power back to those who have lost power over time. Oh shoot, our time has really gone. We could continue on and on. Let's end with this. If Ben McBride was here,
I have one more thought.
Oh, you did? Go for it.
Yeah. Well, at the end of page 191, the author writes that Black folks don't have the privilege of tapping out. We have to stay engaged because often our lives depend on it. Okay. And it made me think about us as followers of Christ. You know, I don't think that we also have
the privilege of tapping out.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that I believe that God has commanded us. I think it's a commandment to fight for those who are downtrodden and those who are being marginalized. I think that our soul depends on it. Like our,
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. I think there is a story that we allow ourselves to believe that we can tap out. And I think it's time we wake up to the reality, just as much as someone cannot tap out with facing oppression. We have a responsibility not to tap out. And
Pastor Sam, I think we often think that we can tap out or we don't participate because we know that end is coming, that we think that we know that these are all part of, just this earth history just going bad. and things are going to happen the way it's going to happen.
Yep.
And therefore we don't have to participate. We can just let it be. But
Yep.
I realize that's not true. There's still plenty that we can do for others where we are.
It's escapism.
Yeah.
It's essentially saying it's all going to burn anyway.
Yeah.
So why even bother? Don't worry, Jesus will bring resolution. Don't worry, Jesus will fix it all. But the responsible Christian recognizes that we have a work to do on this planet, a very important work. And if the work of justice isn't accomplished, then we really are missing a huge side, a huge picture of who this God is and what he is like.
Yeah.
If Ben McBride was here in this conversation, for listeners, I did actually write to Ben McBride. I asked him to come, but the man is busy. He didn't get back to me. Ben McBride, if you're listening to this, the invite is still there. Come and join us. But if Ben McBride was here, what question would you ask him? Or maybe a comment or a statement that you have for him after reading his whole book?
Only one or two questions?
Quickly, go for it.
How does he respond to I wrote it down. How did you respond to fake communities that claim to be welcoming but practice exclusion in subtle ways?
What a question. Oof.
What's the question? I'm sorry. Say that again.
Yeah. How do you respond to fake communities that claim to be welcoming but practice exclusion in subtle ways?
That
was my question.
That's a big question. Oof. That's a good question.
Well, I have more thoughts on that.
No. The question was just give us a question or a comment. We can go on about this, but that's such a good question. That's
for everybody to think about it. You guys don't have to answer right now.
100%. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Dee, any questions or comments? If Ben McBride was here, you just finished reading his book.
Not a question, but that I hope to give him words of comfort that God is with him.
Wow.
That he's doing God's work.
Wow.
Yeah. And there will be a place for him in heaven. Yeah.
Amen. That's very loving, Dee. Amen. Well, I guess what would I say to him? After reading this particular chapter, the quote came to mind by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He says this: silence in the face of evil is evil itself. God will not hold us guiltless. If Ben was here, I would say to him, I'm going to do something. That's what I would say. Thank you for giving me the reminder that it's a command for me that following Jesus means doing something. And that brings us to an end of this conversation. Certainly, it doesn't bring us an end to the conclusions of everything. I think it only just begins things. So maybe the right thing to do at this moment is to pray to close. And I'm going to offer the opportunity for Dee, Jessica. You can pray too. Maybe we can offer just a few sentences, and I don't mind closing in prayer. Yeah. Okay. Dee, do you mind starting? Just a few sentences, nothing long. Jessica, you can go, and then I can wrap things up.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Let's pray.
All right. Dear Lord, thank you so much for bringing all of us together and giving us this opportunity to read this very timely book for all of us. I ask that we submit ourselves to you for us to become like you, have a heart like you, that we can go out there with your strength to stand up and speak up and team up for the people who are marginalized and who are suffering, and that we, as individuals and as a church, that we have courage to be able to stand up and take actions for others, and that you give us wisdom on how to and when to go about in participating in these actions. And we just ask that we are able to put aside our discomforts and inconveniences, and that we can just focus on your love and being able to share that with others. Okay.
Dear God, tonight I just want to say that this book, I hope to all the people that participate on the book during this book, and all the people who's gonna watch the videos and listen to us and talk about this book, I hope that you can work on them to become what you want them to become. I hope that you somehow can help them to stand up for the marginalized people, to understand that you stood up for injustice and see these people through your eyes. That's all I ask you tonight.
Lord, as we come to the end of these pages, we ask for you to continue the chapters in our own lives. Teach us how to continue to be about the work of faithful discipleship for justice in action, because that is what you came to do. You provided justice for all of us. So may we continue to seek it. May we continue to walk the walk with you. May you grant us the courage where we lack and the power where we need it. May we trust you through it all. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, and that brings us to an end of our book on Pages to Progress. We will be back with another book soon, but this is the end for now. And we look forward to a new beginning with another book. May God bless you. And this is goodbye from myself, from Jessica, from Dee,